June 24th, 1993. A computer science professor at Yale walks into his office and opens a package. A bomb inside detonates, destroying the man's right hand, shattering his right eye, and dropping his blood pressure to 0 by the time he reaches the hospital. The man who mailed that bomb lived in a 10 by 12-foot wooden cabin in the remote Montana wilderness. He had no electricity, no running water, and evaded the FBI for 17 years. To the American public, he was a faceless phantom, a hooded figure in aviator sunglasses, known only by the task force name the media gave him, the Unabomber. But long before the bombs in the cabin, Ted Kaczynski was a 16-year-old math prodigy. He grew up in a working-class Polish-American family in Chicago, the son of a sausage maker. The story of the isolated mountain man is only a fraction of what actually happened. To understand how a brilliant teenager became a domestic terrorist, we have to look at the psychological damage inflicted upon him by one of the most elite universities on the planet. Kaczynski's profound isolation started early. At 9 months old, a severe allergic reaction placed him in a hospital with a strict no-visitor policy for parents. Attachment researchers note that separation trauma at that extremely young age can rewire how a child relates to others for the rest of their life. His mother noted he returned home completely shut down, no longer smiling or making eye contact. His intellect only deepened that divide. Testing at an IQ of 167, Kaczynski skipped the 6th and 11th grades. By high school, he was always 2 years younger than everyone else in the room. He later described himself as a social cripple. At just 15, he was accepted to Harvard. He arrived on campus as a 16-year-old freshman on a full scholarship, surrounded by older, wealthier peers. During his sophomore year, Kaczynski was recruited for a psychological study by a professor named Henry Murray. Before Harvard, Murray served as a lieutenant colonel for the OSS, the direct predecessor to the CIA. His job was designing psychological stress tests and interrogation methods to see which spies would break under extreme deception and pressure. In 1959, Murray launched a study using 22 undergraduates. The 17-year-old Kaczynski was assigned the codename Lawful. Students were told to write deeply personal essays about their core beliefs and private desires. They were strapped to electrodes, hit with bright lights, and filmed through a one-way mirror while a law student verbally abused them. Kaczynski endured over 200 hours of these brutalizing sessions over 3 years. Sources indicate the study was funded by the Pentagon and the CIA, aligning perfectly with MKUltra, a covert program testing psychological torture on unwitting American citizens. In 1973, the CIA director ordered all MKUltra files destroyed to protect the agency from embarrassment. In the year 2000, Harvard permanently sealed Kaczynski's study records in a vault. A 17-year-old kid walked into an Ivy League university to study mathematics and was subjected to years of psychological abuse by a former intelligence officer using enemy combatant interrogation techniques. It laid the volatile groundwork for a violent, anti-technology worldview. Despite the torment at Harvard, Kaczynski followed the traditional academic path. He went to the University of Michigan, where he wrote a mathematical dissertation so complex that his committee guessed only 10 people in the entire country could understand it. By 1967, at age 25, he was hired as the youngest professor in the history of UC Berkeley.
2 years later, without any explanation, he quit. He abandoned his tenure-track position, walked away from modern society, and moved to the woods of Lincoln, Montana, teaching himself to live entirely off the land. For a few years, he found peace in isolation. Then the logging started. Roads were cut through the forests, and trees vanished overnight. The wilderness he had chosen over everything else was being torn apart. His lifelong alienation finally found a lethal direction. Over the next 17 years, Kaczynski mailed 16 increasingly sophisticated bombs to university professors, airline executives, and computer store owners, the people he saw as the architects of industrial society. His campaign killed 3 people and injured 23 others. In 1995, he offered to stop the bombings if major newspapers published his 35,000-word manifesto. This flowchart illustrates the central concept of his writings, something he called the power process. He argued that human beings inherently need to set goals, struggle to achieve them, and succeed through their own direct effort. Kaczynski believed that the modern industrial system completely blocks this natural path. Because we no longer have to struggle for basic survival, Society forces us into endless loops he called surrogate activities, like career climbing, consumerism, and entertainment addiction. He predicted technology would acquire complete control over human behavior, warning of a mental health crisis tied to screen dependency decades before smartphones existed. He viewed his lethal bombings as the only viable mechanism to force the world to pay attention to that diagnosis. The gambit of publishing the manifesto worked, but it also became his undoing. Sitting in his home in New York, David Kaczynski read the document and stopped cold at one specific phrase: "You can't eat your cake and have it too." Most people say, "have your cake and eat it too," but their mother insisted on this inverted phrasing, and Ted always used it. David quietly passed his suspicions and old family letters to the authorities. An FBI profiler utilized forensic linguistics, the idea that every person has a unique, fingerprint-like pattern of grammar and word choice, to match the letters to the manifesto. That linguistic analysis generated the search warrant. On April 3, 1996, agents raided the cabin. Kaczynski eventually pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty and received 4 consecutive life sentences. He spent the next 2 decades inside the ADX Florence Supermax prison in a concrete cell smaller than his Montana cabin, until he took his own life in June 2023. Ted Kaczynski never apologized to a single victim. His brother David, however, took the remaining $630,000 in reward money and donated every cent to the survivors, personally apologizing for the terror his brother caused. There is a dark coda to this story, involving Kaczynski's Yale victim, David Galenter. 30 years after opening that package bomb, Galenter was suspended from teaching at Yale. Emails revealed he spent years corresponding with Jeffrey Epstein, even recommending a young female student for a job by detailing her physical appearance to the convicted sex offender. Kaczynski diagnosed the creeping isolation of modern technology with unsettling accuracy, but the moment he mailed bombs that shattered bodies and killed innocent people, he forfeited any right to be taken seriously. He became a murderer, built and broken by the exact corrupt elite systems he spent his life trying to destroy.